The story begins not in a boardroom, not in a glittering ballroom, but in a quiet corner of a skyscraper at night. The cleaning staff worked their silent shifts, mops gliding across polished marble, vacuum cleaners humming faintly through the endless corridors of the most powerful corporation in the city. Among them was Samuel Ortega, a gray-haired janitor with tired hands and calloused palms. He was invisible to most, just another man in a faded uniform, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies. But what nobody knew was that Samuel carried a secret. He once had a gift. A gift that life, poverty, and responsibility had buried deep under decades of sacrifice. The skyscraper Samuel cleaned belonged to Aurora Lynn, a brilliant, young CEO who had inherited her father's global empire. She was sharp, uncompromising, and beautiful, but she carried a reputation of being cold. People whispered that she didn't laugh, didn't cry, and certainly didn't fall in love. At 29, Aurora had men lined up, billionaires and heirs begging for her hand, but she turned them all away with a single word: no. But one evening, fate staged an encounter that would change both of their lives. It was late. Aurora had just returned from a grueling business dinner. Her high heels clicked against the marble floor as she crossed the empty lobby. That's when she noticed it, a faint sound. Music. Soft, hesitant notes echoing through the vast hall. Her brows furrowed. The building was supposed to be empty, except for janitors. Curious, she followed the sound to the grand piano sitting in the lobby, a piece her late father had imported from Europe but which had long collected dust. And there, seated on the bench, was Samuel. His cleaning cart sat pushed aside, and his gnarled fingers danced carefully across the ivory keys. The melody was imperfect, broken in places, but there was something raw, something heartbreakingly beautiful about it. Aurora froze. She hadn't heard this song in years, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, her mother's favorite piece. Her mother, who had died when Aurora was just a teenager. Aurora's voice broke the silence. Who told you you could touch that? Samuel jumped, startled. He stood quickly, bowing his head. I'm sorry, ma'am. I shouldn't have. I'll leave. But Aurora's eyes narrowed. Wait, do you even know what you were playing? Samuel swallowed hard. Chopin, ma'am. It was his nocturne. I haven't touched a piano in years, but... That was when she interrupted him with a smirk. If you can play Chopin, I'll marry you. She said it half in jest, half in challenge. To her, it was impossible. To her, no janitor could possibly understand Chopin deeply enough to play it well. But Samuel didn't smile. He looked at her with steady, almost wounded eyes and said softly, "Then listen." Aurora was taken aback. For the first time, someone had not trembled under her arrogance but had met it with quiet conviction. Slowly, he sat back down and began again. His hands shook at first, the weight of her gaze pressing on him, but soon, something shifted. His touch grew surer, his movements flowing. The music filled the lobby, sweeping through the marble and glass. And Aurora felt something stir inside her chest. Memories. Her mother sitting beside her at a piano, her small fingers guided over the keys, the warmth of love she hadn't felt in years. Tears prickled her eyes before she could stop them. She turned away, but it was too late. The music had already broken through her armor. When Samuel finished, silence hung between them. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but the heavy silence of souls that had just recognized one another. Aurora cleared her throat, trying to hide the emotion in her voice. Where did you learn that? Samuel smiled, faintly. Before I became a janitor, I studied at the conservatory. I wanted to be a pianist. But life didn't allow me. My father fell ill. My siblings were hungry. Someone had to work. I put down the keys and picked up a mop. And I never looked back. Aurora blinked. The most powerful men in her life, business tycoons, politicians, had never moved her. And yet, here was a janitor who had just unlocked her heart with nothing but a melody. Days turned into weeks, and something unexpected began. Aurora found herself lingering in the lobby after work, pretending to check emails while Samuel played. Each night, the man who polished her floors filled the cold skyscraper with warmth, weaving Chopin, Beethoven, Liszt, pieces she hadn't heard since her mother's passing. The employees began to whisper. The CEO and the janitor, what strange company. But Aurora didn't care. For the first time, she was not the CEO. She was simply Aurora. And Samuel, he wasn't invisible anymore. But happiness is never without its challenges. One evening, Aurora's board of directors confronted her. They had seen the rumors, the pictures of her standing by the piano while the janitor played. "This is unacceptable," one of them sneered. "Do you understand what it looks like for a CEO of your stature to associate with a janitor? If this continues, shareholders will lose confidence." Aurora's fists clenched. For a moment, she almost yielded. Years of training told her to protect the company's image above all. But then she thought of her mother. Her mother, who had told her once, "Don't marry money, Aurora. Marry music, marry kindness, marry love." So Aurora stood her ground. "I don't care about your confidence," she said coldly. "He plays Chopin better than any of you could ever understand." But the real test came one night when Aurora asked Samuel something she had been afraid to say aloud. Why didn't you ever try again? To play. To be who you were meant to be." Samuel's smile was sad. "Because the world doesn't care for janitors who dream. I was a nobody. Still am." Aurora reached across the piano, her hand brushing his. "You are not a nobody. Not to me." That was the night everything changed. Weeks later, Aurora shocked the entire city. At a charity gala, in front of hundreds of cameras, she invited Samuel to the stage. The audience gasped, whispering, confused. But then Samuel sat at the grand piano, his worn hands trembling as he began to play Chopin once more. The hall fell silent. Even the most arrogant billionaires leaned forward, spellbound. Aurora walked onto the stage, her eyes fixed only on him. And when the final note faded, she lifted the microphone and said the words that silenced the world. "You once said, if you can play Chopin, I'll marry you. Well, tonight, you played it. And I mean it." The hall erupted. Some in shock, some in joy, some in outrage. But Samuel, tears streamed down his weathered face. For the first time in decades, his music had not only been heard, it had been loved. Their story spread across the globe. People debated, criticized, admired. But what mattered was that Aurora and Samuel found in each other what the world could never buy: understanding, healing, and love. And so, the janitor who was once invisible became the man who reminded a CEO how to feel. Together, they proved that true worth is not in status or wealth, but in the music of the soul. And if you, dear listener, ever doubt yourself, remember this: one song, one gift, one act of courage can change everything. Because sometimes, love doesn't come from the boardroom. Sometimes, it comes from the janitor playing Chopin in the lobby at night.